And the first section of this has to do with logic, okay? Thinking logically about how to handle design. And we're going to start off with lace on a base, okay? And where we're going to end up with is freestanding lace, all right? So there's a logic to things, and I'm going to send you these images, but let me see if I can insert the image if I have to convert it. And I'm going to have to go hunt it because I don't think I brought this one. I might have. Let me... Okay, so... see if I put it in Heirloom.
I think exquisite. Isn't that the same one we had?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oops, sorry. Okay, let me go. There's the lace. Okay. We're going to start off looking at lace on a base, and we're going to follow a logic to this. Okay? And I'm going to just hide the hoop for right now. Now, I will send you this image. So when you go to insert the image, right? I went to insert image. And you can see it doesn't show up here because the default is bitmap. So just go down to all files and you're going to see this big file here. Okay? Now, I'm at 91%. If I go to 100%, that gives me an idea of how big this design is. And this is a good kind of size to start at. All right? We're going to ignore this top one, but you can work on it if you want to, you know, later. This is done on a base. In this case up here, it's done on like a tulle netting, right? You can see the net pattern.
Yeah.
On this one down here, I'm going to turn off the grid. It is done on an organza or an organdy. Okay, it's very sheer, but you know, and you can even see, like in here, you can see, you know, they didn't cut these out. It's done on a very sheer fabric. So either, you know, either way is good. This will, if you digitize it correctly, should kind of hold up on a small, you know, small netting like this. Okay? But I'm going to zoom in. Remember, you touch the B key and zoom in. And we're going to zoom in around, whoops, sorry.
B as in boy.
B as in boy. So I'm going to zoom in around here. And this is a repeat design. You know, you're going to do this. You're not going to digitize this whole section and let it stitch and then come back and do these pieces because this is very sheer and it's going to shift. So you want to control the sections and how they stitch and make sure that they are connecting properly. Okay? And you can see here's a connection here. Here's a connection here, right? If you look down here, it's a little bit harder to see where it's connecting, but it's connecting right in here. Okay? So, you know, this is, if you look, I'm going to use the pink pen.
Thank you.
There's a connection, right? And
Where?
Okay.
can you see the pink up here?
Yes,
Yes.
now I can.
Okay, and here is another connection spot. Okay.
Where is that? Okay.
Okay. So, you know that this is a connector here, right? That's where it starts, basically connecting. And then you know there's another connection here. So, you know, if we're looking at it, that would be over in here. So, from here to here, and, you know, we can go kind of around like that. This is one section. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and if you look at this, you know, there's connectors here,
I don't know where you are, but anyway.
let me clear this off.
No, leave it there.
Well, that's okay. I'm going to erase the drawings for right now. Okay, now, when you're stitching this, right, it jumps. It actually does a stitch down to here. Okay, do you guys see where I'm at?
Yes. Up on top.
Okay. So when you come down here, this is all basically put together, but there's another connector here and here and here. See what's going on? They're not worried about the jump here. They're just putting a stitch there. There is nothing here on this last one. But there is a connection to that bottom right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you see kind of the logic that they used when they created each segment?
Yes. Because
Okay.
you're going to cut and paste.
Right, we're just going to cut and paste. But, you know, it's also, excuse me, the logic of, you know, planning out your design. All right, so you can see all those connectors. And, you know, we're going to look at how to do this design. Now, we know we start here. So there's like a half arc here. And then, you know, there's this line, right? And this is a very lightweight fabric, so you're going to have to control your settings a little bit on this. Let me kind of move the controls out of my way. So what we're going to do is we're going to start up here. And because it's a very narrow stitch, and it's, you know, it's all pretty even, we can use this, you know, steel or, you know, your satin border tool. Okay, so we're going to select that. I am going to zoom in very close around here. Okay, so you can see the connectors a little bit better. Now I have my border tool selected. I'm going to left click. I'm going to right click here. And so that I don't have a big problem, because you know sometimes that point gets a little funny, I'm going to left click. And then next to it, left click again. And then come up and right click, left click, right click. And, you know, I'm going to put that little double left click even though they're going to overlap each other. That's okay.
All right, go back through that. You're going to go left, right, then left twice.
Right. I'm going to come down here. I start up here, a little bit over. I'm going to right click about halfway. And then I'm going to left click and then left click next to it. See those 2 points right there?
Yes, and then you're going to do a right click up at the top.
Right, and then left click next to it again. And then right click. And I'll show you what happens if I don't left click that double left click. I'm just going to left click, left click here. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
See the difference?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're trying to avoid. So those double left clicks down here help me avoid that. Okay?
Oh, sugar. I just spilled my glass of tea. Shoot.
Okay, so does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All
That's
right.
what happened when I did that reverse applique. It kind of pointed out.
Right, and that double left click will help control it, because what's going on here is, here's a straight segment. That right click turns this section into a curve the minute I place that third point down here. See? When I place a left click there, that stops the curve. So I can jump over here and left click real close. So between there is a straight segment. Right clicking here means that now is going to become a curve the minute I come back down here and place those points. And it's just, you know, try to keep these even if you can, you know, about the same position. They don't have to be perfect. But you're only going to do over 2. Oops. And if you make a mistake, you guys know you can backspace, right, to get out of it?
Yes.
I am only doing over 2 that next segment where it connects. And if you zoom in this big and you can't see, don't worry, it scrolls, see, automatically. So we know that this is where, we're going to end. You can see that little connection. So we're going to right-click here. You can right-click up here, and you want to come all the way over and left-click. Okay, so this is what I've got now, right? You guys can see that? And that default size is actually pretty good when you look at what we're looking to do. But this is going to sit on a base. I still needed to have a little bit of oomph underneath, more underlay, basically, and a little less density on top. So I'm going to go to select, and I'm going to go into my details, my object details, and here's my satin line. The width at 2, it's pretty good. It's a little wider than maybe it should be, so we could change this to 1.5 if we wanted to. You're going to drop your density down, and you're going to have to play with this because it does depend on your thread, but, try maybe about 70 to 80%, okay? Underlay. Edge run is not going to make it. We want edge and center. Okay? So that's going to give us like 3 lines underneath. You could even do center and zigzag, but these 3 should be good. Or these 2 should be good. Stretchiness, you want your stretchiness on. And you're going to go ahead and say OK. And you can see the difference, right? Okay, see the width difference? And that matches up when it sews more with what the actual width is going to end up being. Okay, now what's nice about this line is I also need to change my in and out points because I need to connect up with this down here. So I'm going to go into reshape. Here's my out point. See that little plus symbol? Can you see the plus? I'm going to pull that down to here. My in point I can leave alone. That's fine. But, I definitely want the plus down here, and it's that black plus symbol. I know it's probably hard to see. I'm trying to put it where you can see it. See it? Right there?
No, I can't see. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to put that down here.
And that is called what?
That is my out point. That's the end
Okay,
stitching
gotcha.
point. Okay, so, this line coming up from the center, let me zoom out to, 150%. See this line here? Ignore it. It's not going to affect anything. It isn't really there. It is just a machine code because this is center and that's jumping out to the beginning. But that doesn't actually stitch. Okay? You zoom back in around here because I'm working here right now. I need to make this border. But, I don't want it to be too tight. I do want it to cover, so, I can use the border tool again. And my border has to go where, this lines up. So I'm going to kind of come right here, come across to about here, so there's a little overlap when those 2 sections meet. If you want it perfectly straight, to hold your control key, right?
Mm-hmm.
Press enter, and, there is, my steel line. I'm going to nudge that up just a little bit to make sure that it's really over these points here, right? Go into your object details. Same thing, this does not have to be heavy. I would leave this at 2, but drop this down to about, 70 or 80%. Underlay, same thing. I would do the 3 here, but I would increase the stitch length. And of course your stretchiness, right? On this, because you are on a netting, those 3 lines will kind of act like a tent and hold it up. If you notice that this is too tight, you might want to change this to, edge run and zigzag. But this will probably be just fine. So I'm going to say OK. And now I've got that first section of my design created. Go to Object Details, Your end point goes here. See that big square? Can you guys see the square right there? Well, the diamond shape. That is where I start stitching, so we're going to move it over here. My out point is already down here. It's kind of hiding. See my out point over here?
On your left.
Yep. I'm going to move my out point right here because that's the next place I'm going. Okay? So we only have to do this correct once because the rest of this is going to be copy and paste. Okay, now, you guys remember also when you do this, you're going to put the same color bobbin thread in, you know, that you're using on top, right? You're going to make sure it's the same because, you know, a lot of this, because it's sheer, you know, if you use white, it's going to show through. So make sure you have the same color bobbin. And, you know, this is light and frail, so you're going to drop that density down. And we're going to use our run tool next. And this is where the logic starts. So you might want to print this out and think, you know, or draw it before you do it. Move down a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. You know, this is where you have to really think about what you're doing. This next section's easy. We know we drop down here, but where do we go from here? You know, I would travel, and if you look really close, that's more dense there than over here because they traveled, right? So you're going to travel. You could actually travel all the way down here, do a little French knot, and then, you know, travel back in here and fill this area. Now I'm going to zoom in around that flower for a minute. It makes it a little bit harder to see. Let me zoom back out. Okay, this is very open, but you can actually see the stitching in here, right? There's a little heavier stitch there. There's a heavier stitch around the outside, too. So, you know, we're going to do a couple of things here. The first thing we're going to do is, you know, this is just a run stitch, single line. So we're going to take a single run. We're going to just straight up. If you do that, because it's selected, just undo and unselect it. Okay, and then select your straight stitch. Then you're just going to come down here, 2 left clicks, and then you're going to start right-clicking, left click because it's straight, all the way up to this French knot. Okay, now, the French knot can be created quite easily. I'm going to stop here because, you know, there's my line, right? Straight stitch line. But this little French knot here can be created very, very easily. And if it's easier to do it, create it off to the side. But this literally is a French knot. And a French knot, let me turn on the grid here. It's easier sometimes to make it off to the side, even if you make it very large. You're going to use your running line. And, you know that you stopped here. So let's start it. And I'm going to use like a 4-space grid. So I'm going to just click here and click here, right? I have to come back, so I'll come back a little bit off. Well, I'll come back to the center, I guess. And then you're going to, just kind of go like this. Short stitches and long stitches, right? And don't put them all dead center. You kind of want to stagger it. Okay, so there's one French knot, right? Where we have to end is right back here where we started, basically. But there's one section of a French knot. So I'm going to come back here and come back down. And I'm going to hit enter just to show you what you've got. Okay, now we know that we start and we stop here. If you look over here, here's your section, right? I'm going to change that one to green so I know what it is. Okay? Then I'm just going to copy. I'm going to paste. Left click on it. Rotate it a little bit. And it looks kind of big and you know, bushy and that kind of stuff, right? But select these two. And remember, the French knot, you know, left click on it to get your black squares. The French knot's pretty small, so you're going to hold your shift key, and we're going to shrink this down a little bit more. And see where that little dot is right there? That is where your last point was. So, you know, make sure you group these now. Drag this over to here. And we can make it a little bit bigger. But I'm going to rotate this a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, and then let's go ahead and change this back to red. And I'll show you what it looks like in preview mode. Okay, so that's not too bad. You can make it a little heavier if you want. You can spend more time on the French knot if you want. You could go, you know, I don't think there's any French knots in the gallery, but let's look.
There is.
Is there French knots? Oh, here's one. There's one there.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just grab the French knot here, which, you know, would make things a little bit easier and quicker, right? Okay, so there's a French knot. So you could do it that way too. And because I forgot to tell you something else on this, because we use running stitches, if you do make your own French knot, you want to come in here and you want to set this at like 10 millimeters and watch what happens. See how dense that looks? See how much, you know, it looks now much more like a French knot, right? So I'll leave it up to you how you do the French knot. So you have a couple of different options. Okay, so now we know that this is where we ended. And we're just going to go back to, you know, our little running stitch into here. Just a little jump back. And just hit enter. Okay, now this is satin stitching. And then there's a little zigzag around it. It doesn't look like satin stitching, but it is. And, you know, it's done in two pieces, which is part of what that overlap is. So we're going to use, you know, our turning angle fill, but we're going to go back to satin. And we're going to start up here, and you're going to keep this, you know, as even keeled as you can. You know, remember to right click in here, and, you know, you might want to, you know, put another point in here first, and make sure you get that, you know, curve there, right? And I'm going to overlap this, and I'm just kind of left clicking on the left side, right clicking on this side. Okay, so you could put a step in here if you wanted to, but what we really need to do is go select object properties, and you know, it's got the auto split here, but we're going to drop our density way down, probably in the 50 to 60 range. Okay, that's why I said you could put, you know, weave in here if you wanted to, right?
Now where is object details?
That is when you are, like, when you click on something with this little hand right here, that selects it. To get to your object details, it's this little sheet of paper up here.
Okay.
And that'll take me into here. So I'll go ahead, we'll try it with the weave fill first. I'm going to make my stitch length, let's start off at 6 and see if that's enough. My stitch spacing, which is my density, we'll try 0.8. And I don't want any underlay except maybe just the edge run, right? The edge run will probably be okay. The stretchiness, you want that, you know, most, okay, so see, this is not going to work. That's my weave fill. I could try increasing my stitch length on this. You know, I could make my stitch length 10. And let's see if it'll let me do it.
But don't you want it to be open and airy?
You do. So that's why I'm playing with these settings. I'm going to go back to a stitch length of 6. And let's change this to 0.8. So there we go. That looks a lot more like it should, right?
All right. Yes.
Looks a lot more like it should.
Yeah.
Okay. So and remember, if you need to reshape this a little bit, you can go into your reshape tool and, pull these nodes down to kind of shape it a little bit better if you need to. Like, maybe you want to pull that over a little bit more here, or, make this a little more pointed up here. Okay, now move your in point over here. Your out point is going to be somewhere down in this vicinity, and it's hard to see on this background, so I'm going to turn my background off. There is my out point. My out point's okay down here, as long as, I remember that I have to move it. So since I'm going to use this piece again, I might want to go, in has to be here, out has to be down here. So we'll leave it like that. But this piece is looking pretty good. So instead of reinventing the wheel, I'm just going to use this piece, right? I'm going to edit copy, edit paste, or duplicate. You could duplicate. They do pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to use these flip tools. So I'm going to flip it, drag this into position, rotate it if I have to, which is just another click, and there's my little circle that I like to move, and control where it pivots, right? Okay, now I have to think about my in and out points again. So I'm going to go into reshape. My in point needs to be down here because the out point for this was down here, right? And I get a little run line in here. That's not going to really affect anything. But, I could go in here, and let me select it with this and see if it'll allow me to do that. Won't let me travel on the edge. I was going to try to travel on the edge with this, but won't let me do that. Okay, so I'm here, and I've got this section pretty much done, and it's looking pretty good compared to the other one, right? If that in and out point bothers you, what you could try to do is, move your in point. That's my out point. The out point has to be down here. I could try moving my in point, and then we'll move the other out point a little bit and see if that helps. I think either way I'm going to be kind of stuck with a line somewhere, so we'll just take it here. Alright, so I'm back down here now, right? Let me zoom out so you can see what's going on. Okay,
The line that's come. The line that is on the right.
Right here. Oh, wait, hold on. On the left, you mean?
Excuse me, on the left-hand side.
That is a travel stitch.
Well, why couldn't you just do it on down the center?
If I wanted to, what I could do is, if you look at this piece, okay, here's my out point, right? Here's my out point. If I really wanted to, what I could do is control how that goes by, creating a run stitch from here up the middle.
Yes.
Okay, let me
And back to the top.
move it in between, and then I can treat this the same way. I can take this starting point and move it up here. Whoops, let me undo that. This little diamond, right? Move it up here and move this down here. So it's up to you to decide. See, that stitch is now gone.
But then if you go up the center, like it looks like it, and go back to the top, you've got to get back to the top.
Well, if I move that, see what I've done right now is I did this piece, and it starts here and ends here. So I made that running line up the middle, and I start here and end here, and I was able to get rid of the line over here. And I still have that center section, which is going to look pretty similar to this, right?
I've lost you.
Okay, see the center section over here, Nance?
No, I've lost you.
Oh, hold on a second. Can you guys see my screen still?
I can.
I've got
Yeah.
to
Wiggle,
I've got to go
wiggle
to
your,
me.
It's just the delay.
wiggle your mouse a little and see if it, maybe your computer went to sleep.
Mm-mm.
You still lost us?
Oh, here, wait a minute. Now I've got you. You have to click on the flower.
Oh, okay. All right, see
Symbol.
this section in the center right here? That is a little bit wider, but, you know, remember we're going to stitch this. Looks pretty similar to this, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now let me erase those. If it'll let me erase those. Maybe, maybe not. You might be stuck with this now. Oh, there we go. Normal drawing tools. Erase. Okay, we're back on normal. Okay, so, you know, so you've got that center section. The only thing that we don't have, which we should add, is that outline around the outside, right? Let me zoom in. Undo. Okay, so see that little edge of an outline around the outside, and that's going to be easy enough to do. You know, we're just going to use basically our steel tool, our border tool, and we know that we end here, so if we, you know, just go barely inside this, right, just barely inside it, then we're going to get that little border.
Is the square up at the top your ending point?
That's the ending point of the last piece that you created.
All right, now where's your start?
The start would be, it's not going to show on here, but the start was actually at the top. See where my mouse is right now?
Yes.
That was where it started, because remember we made that run line up?
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm just making that little border, and I'm using, you know, it's the steel tool, but basically they call it, you know, the border tool here. Okay, so there's my steel tool. I'm going to hit enter, and that's way, way, way too fat and fluffy, right? So I go to, you know, the little pointy hand for select, go to object details, and, you know, we don't want it that wide, so we could probably go 1.5, and we are taking that density way down to about 60%. No underlay, nothing. We don't need it, and there we go. You know, you could probably take it down even a little bit more if you wanted to. So we were at 60, we could probably go down to about 50. Okay. So now that's looking a whole lot more like this, right?
We'll try it at 1.25, the width.
Not too much to change. I think it went to 1.25. You know, I could take this down to even maybe 30, 35%. See?
That looks more like it, don't you think?
Yeah, you just have to play with your settings. So let me zoom back out to 100% so you can see what it looks like. You know, we're getting, you know, pretty close on this, right? And the reason this is so open is because this fabric really can't hold a lot of heavy stitches. This is sheer. It's probably like an organdy, it could be a cotton organza. You know, it depends on what they're doing with this. But it's, you know, very light and very sheer. And, you know, doing this large lace design, you really want this light and sheer, right? Okay, so now we're coming back around here. But we've got these little pieces here to worry about. So what we're going to do is you're going to have to think about this. You're going to do the little steel stitch up to here and stop. Run and then back and stop, right? Down to here, run and then back. Satin, a little heavier satin, and in and out points will go here. And, you know, so there's a logic to this, right? And that's what you have to kind of think through when you're making this design. So I'm going to go ahead and use this steel tool. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to use my satin tool, and I'll tell you why. I have to stop, start, and stop, you know, start and stop, and I have more control with this tool than I do this tool. Okay? So I'm going to use this tool, and, you know, this is going to take some practice. This is the tool that goes right and left. Remember, you can still right click, but you want this narrow and you want it centered on this line. So you're going to do this very narrow. And, you know, if you make a mistake, don't forget you can backspace. But this is going to take a little practice. You want to make sure that you keep that column, you know, as even as possible all the way through here. Okay?
And you're left and right clicking.
I am. Actually, what I'm doing here is, okay, this is the left click sound. That's the left click sound. Hear it? Right click sound. All right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm going, you know, here's my, you know, click to the right. I come over to the left. Then I go to the right. You know, left.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to keep curving this. Actually, left clicked there. And because it's a curve, I'm going to keep right clicking. And, you know, just try to keep this an even column width. And if I have to, I can adjust it, but I have a lot more control with this than I do the steel tool. So when I come down to here, I can left click and end it. And, you know, I'm going to have to adjust a little bit and just press enter. See, I'm a little heavier than I want to be, but not a big deal. You know, I can go into here and reshape this and just pull these down so they're a little bit less in width, right? Now, the other thing I want to look at is, I'm going to show you this. See how narrow this column actually is? I'm going to make it more narrow. This is going to be a very, very narrow satin stitch. And what happens with the narrow satin stitch is A, it pulls a lot. And B, it just really is difficult to stitch, you know, when it's that narrow. To give you an idea of how narrow, let's go down to 100%. That's pretty narrow. It's doable, but it's still pretty narrow, right? So what I could do on this is select it. I'm going to zoom in. Remember, be like boy and zoom in. And I'm going to go into, you know, my reshape, okay, and just kind of reshape this a little bit and make sure it's centered on that red line. And just adjust it so the width is even. Okay, now, I'm going to adjust the density on this, number one. So I go to Object Details. I'm going to drop this all the way down. You know, we already know that, you know, maybe 40-50%. I'm going to go to 45, and I'll let you kind of adjust it, okay? I need no underlay. Well, not an edge run. I need a center run, okay? Stretchiness, you always want your stretchiness, then you say okay. See what that looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Now, to make this stitch better, I'm going to start angling these lines just a little bit. Okay, see how I'm angling? I'm just dragging and angling that. And I'm going to make sure that I angle them all in the same direction. Like, you know, if I'm pulling, you know, the top one or the right side, however you want to look at it, and angling that, I'm going to make sure that I make these angles all the same all the way through here. You can punch this, but I needed to illustrate this to you. You can punch them so that they go in the right direction too. Okay? And, you know, I'll even angle a little bit up here. Okay, what happens when I angle is that...
What do you mean by punch them?
When I create this, like I'll show you in the next section, when I go to create this, instead of creating straight across,
Okay.
I can, you know, create at this angle. What happens when I angle is this stitch length increases. See what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
When you have very narrow satin, putting this at an angle is going to make that, it's going to give it more length to work with. It's going to let you make a better stitch. Okay? And you know, this one they went kind of straight across. It's a little bit wider. You can make this a little bit wider, but you know, just so you know, if you do have a narrow stitch like that, putting it at the angle is always good. Okay, now, you know, so when you get to this point, you know, you started here automatically and you ended here. and you're just going to come over to your little run tool, and you're just going to go around this little curve, hit enter, and come back and hit backtrack. And that automatically makes that line right on top of each other. See, here's the line I made, here's the backtrack. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just going back up here. Now, I'm going to zoom in because you have to connect these. So, you end here, so you're going to overlap a little bit. And see, I don't have to go straight across. I can angle as I punch this. See? I control the stitch direction here when I'm in column.
Now, does this have, are you through with that thing that looks like a coiled snake?
What thing that looks like a coiled snake? Right here?
Where the, looks like a G.
Oh, up here.
Yes.
Yep. What I did, I'm going to make the second one now. I'm going to go to my run tool. I'm going to just click across here, right? Right click to make the curves. Enter. And see where that little square is? That is where my last stitch is, right? I'm going to just select it and hit this icon, which is called backtrack. And what it's going to do is make another, if you look over here on the side, see where my little blue square is over here?
Yes.
Okay. Watch what happens when I hit the backtrack button. It made another little square down there, or another little curl, and now it ends over here. So what it does literally is just repeats this and makes it reverse. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now I have this piece right here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I have that piece right here now, right? And, I can adjust this density later. I can select it from here and adjust it. You guys kind of got the gist how to do this. But this is a big satin stitch piece. So, I'm going to use absolutely the column tool. And let me zoom in so you can see what's going on. I am going to, not worry about this. It's going to jump straight across. It's a very short jump, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to left click to make that bottom piece. And then this is all right clicking all the way through here. All right clicks.
Bernie, why wouldn't you have done a run stitch to the end and then gone backwards with that?
Well, watch
a travel stitch.
Okay, here's my satin stitch piece, right? I'm going to select it. I probably will have to make some adjustments. You can, you can select it with this, or you can just go straight to reshape. There's my in point. Here's my out point. I'm going to drag that out point over there. Then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to, make my adjustments. I'm going to drop the density down between 75 to 80 because that was a little filled in. Make sure there's stretchiness. Check your underlay. On this, center run and edge run is probably good because you need something to support the width. And there you go. So I don't always have to create that run line. I mean, you can if you feel comfortable, punching, and sometimes I will. It depends on what I'm doing. I probably could take that density down a little more too. But, I also know I can move my in and out points. Okay, and before you drop that density down too much, stitch this out and, make sure, because this is always going to be just maybe a little heavier on the satin stitch look than it really is. But you can see, I've gotten this right here. Now I'm free to just pick right back up and get down to here. Okay, and this is what we look like in Visualizer. Let me hide this. That's what we're looking like so far. You guys have any questions on any of this so far?
Now, is there some way that you can, on those little, do a triple line rather than a single line?
You could. As a matter of fact, when you backtrack, because,
Uh-huh.
you have to, like on this piece right here, okay? Here's my original running stitch. This is the backtrack. If I want to make it heavier, I just go to my settings and tell it triple.
Okay.
Okay? I can do it that way. Now, something to think about is you have some stitches in here that aren't, really in this design, right? Like, your stem stitch line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you do this next section, you could try playing with the line. Let me get out of that. Hold on. You could try playing with the line and seeing if the stem stitch gives you an effect
Mm-hmm.
that you like on this, right? Because the stem stitch, it's kind of a nice little line. It's a little zigzag. I'll leave the width at 2. There's my spacing. I can make this spacing more or less. And here's my angle. If I put my angle at 0, the best I can do is 15, right? It won't let you go to 0. But you can see what happens. It elongates. If I go to 90, you're basically at a zigzag. So the angle they had was 45 is the default. And why are you not letting me say okay? Huh. Let me cancel that and go back in. For some reason, it didn't like what I did. See the stem stitch line? That's a little quicker than the column. And it's still going to give you the same effect, and you have some options where you can change that. Like if you don't like that angle, see the angle that it's at? Let me zoom in. See the angle? If you don't like the angle, just go in and change it, to maybe 60. Okay? If you don't think it's dense enough, no problem. Here's your spacing. Change it to 1. It gets a little tighter. Let me see if it won't let me go to 1.
Excuse me.
So it gets a little bit tighter. It's up to you. You can play with these different lines and these different fills and see which one you like, right? You have a lot of options in the program. So, to go in and play with, either the stem stitch, which actually would probably work out just fine, or, I recommend, I'll put it this way, I recommend you do the column, at least practice the column, okay, because that comes in handy a great deal. But the stem stitch will work just fine. You just have to remember to stop and start back up at that angle, or at least connect it enough so that there's an overlap on this, right?
Are you going to leave that's up top that heavy?
No, I would go in and change it. I'm going to leave
No,
it for
don't.
right now. But, I could go in
We-
and change it.
We'll change it.
Right.
Do that last thing.
Okay, when I come down into here, I have to remember that, these 3 little, bells, and then these 3 pieces are part of my repeat, right? So, I'm not going to do this first because there's no connector here. The connections are all underneath this line, right? So I'm going to come down, I'm going to do these bells. And, and I'm going to do one of these. I'm only going to do 1 bell. I'll put it that way. But, so if you do this correctly, then you only have to do it once, and then you can copy and paste. And when you think about the logic involved, you know you're going to end here. You have to do that little curly Q. But, you're just going to, I always forget this. Hold on.
I have got to excuse myself for a minute.
Okay. If you forget what, like I do, to unselect something, just undo and then go back and select. So, I know that I'm going to come down here and I'm going to, travel. Where are you going to travel? It doesn't matter. You can do the center bell first, and then come back and travel over and do the sides. So I'll probably do it that way. Just come down and, same thing. My rules on, like working smarter, right? So I'm just going to copy that and paste it, and let me zoom out so I can get to it. And because I made this correctly the first time, I know where my in and out points are, and I'm just going to drag it down, and I know that, my out point is that little square, right? And, you can rotate a little bit if you want. Okay, so, now I'm going to come back. I'm going to make that little bell. And this little bell's made a little bit different than the other one because it's not as heavy. You've got this line here, but, the principle's still pretty much the same. You're going to use your tool, your column tool, and, you're just going to start punching across the same way. Make sure you have that little overlap, and, I probably need to put an extra step in here to make that corner. You want that little overlap, right? And you want to make sure you know where you start and you stop, which right now, we started at that point. We're going to have to move our end point a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to just go into the select, and I didn't punch this perfectly, but I wanted you to kind of get the point. I'm going to move that, go into object details. I'm going to drop that density down, and, you can try the weave stitch if you're happy with that, but I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to go 50%, no underlay, leave the stretchiness, and I'm going to say okay. All right, so, there's one side. And that there's my out point, there's my end point. I don't have any running stitches underneath. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to do the same thing. Come down here, run up to here, right? Then I'm going to select, and I need to get out of the punching tool. I'm going to select that. I'm going to edit, duplicate, and if you look at the hotkey, that's Control D. I'm going to mirror it or flip it, and I'm just going to drag it over, make sure there's that little bit of overlap, and if you need to adjust it. And here's my in and out points. I know that I did them correctly because there's my little square. I've got a little overlap, and I'll probably adjust that because it's driving me crazy, but maybe a little rotate and a little overlap, right? And if you find that these two pieces need to be wider, don't try stretching one out. Just hold your control key, select the first piece, hold the control key, select the second piece, hold the shift key, and pull it, and see how it adjusts evenly. There we go. And then you're just going to outline it, with the running stitch. If you look, this is now a running stitch, right? Okay, and there's, that overlap. I put the overlap in, but when you really look at this, it really doesn't have a whole lot of overlap. But this is going to be a little heavier than here, but I would rather have overlap. Or you could punch this whole thing as one piece and just do the running stitches here. Either way. The problem is that that's wide enough that you're not going to get a good satin stitch. So you have a little more control here. Even if you have this heavier piece here, it's not going to be that heavy, and it kind of matches this a little better, right?
Right.
Okay, now what I've got is, I'm back down to ending here. So I'm just going to take that little run tool and do a little run stitch here. I can come over to one side or the other, which I'll just go this way, and enter. And I'm going to stop right there. So what I've got is, here's my, here's the stem stitch down. Here's my little run stitch, right? Here's my French knots. Here's these pieces right here, right? And I'm going to ignore that piece right now. So I've got these selected, right? Here's that first little run stitch. the French knots, the two sides, and that, run stitch in between, and I can hold the shift key and select all of them. Then it's just the same thing. Edit, duplicate, and one more thing, edit, group. And, if I had put the outlines in, I would put the outlines there as well. Okay, now I've got this little piece. I'm going to line up that piece right there, that where I know like it's going to rock on. I'm going to left click a second time and see the little circle right here? Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to move that little pivot point to that, where I want it to pivot at. And I'm going to come to the sides and just rock it into place. Worst case, I've got this little piece up here that needs editing, right? Not a big deal. If you have to ungroup, but usually you can just go into your reshape and pick that piece out. I'm going to put my end point there, and I'll pull that down to there. Okay, so this is what I have. I end right here. See my little square? So I know that I need to make my little run stitch up to here. And then I can just travel over to here. And
Are you going to do a running stitch around it?
I'm not going to do a running stitch around on this one because you guys know how to do that. You guys know how to trace around. So, it's just, but, you could or you could leave. Could or could just leave it. It depends on what you want to do. But, okay, now I'm going to select this piece that I grouped, right? Edit, duplicate. I'm going to flip it, and then I'm going to move it. And if you need to, left click a second time and, pivot it a little bit.
You are so smart.
See, I just, work smarter, not harder, right? If they all look the same, and see how close that lined up? That was really good. Okay, so this is what we've got. We're looking pretty good so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we ended here just like we did with the last one, so we know we take that little jump, and we jump up to here, right? And, then you can travel over to these pieces. So we're going to travel, just like this.
Did you do that bottom hook?
Which bottom hook? This little piece down here?
Up top.
Oh, no, I didn't do that one. I figured once you guys knew how to do that other one, you were good, right?
I love you. You just think we're so smart.
Well, now I'm going to jump over to here. See? I jumped over to that piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Zoom in. And that's just a little, single run stitch. And, I would probably adjust this, to be honest, because it may show through. And that's real simple. I just grab the node and pull it down, right? Okay, so now I'm to this piece, right? Column stitch, turning angle fill is what it's called in this program. Left click, close together up here, right click. You're going to keep right clicking all the way down this one till you get to the bottom. Then it's 2 left clicks very close together. And, turn that into a satin stitch. And, of course, you want maybe an edge run. That's it. You don't want the center run. And, to adjust your density, right? And you can adjust that however you want. That's actually probably pretty good. But I end right here, right? So, I'm just going to pick up that satin stitch again. And I'll show you why. I'm going to just pick up right here, and it's going to be very close. I'm going to make this other one up here. And I left clicked at the beginning of those because I wanted a lot of control and they're pretty straight. When I come up here, I'm just going to right click. And, this is the one I'm going to have to change some things on. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to, of course, drop my density, right? Underlay, we'll just do an edge run on this too. And then I'm going to go up to reshape, and I'm going to move this point down to here. Okay. That is not going to show significantly underneath this, so I'm going to leave that line just like it is. Okay. This one, from here, you're going to come down and do this. All right, and that's going to be, literally, that's what the satin stitch. If you look here, there's like a little ball here. I probably would do a little run down here. I'm not quite sure what to think of that little ball right now, so I'm going to just do a run. And Barbara, if you want to run all the way over here, you can. But I would, because I can move my in and out points, and this is kind of like a little funny overlap, I'm going to assume it starts here. And, to right click, it gives you curves, left click gives you points, right? So this could be a pretty quick little border. I'm going to backspace out of that and do the little right click here. And, since I decided to go ahead and, instead of making a ball there, kind of arc that, I probably would change this point up here and just pull it up like this. So there's my in point, and, to make sure that connects even more, I'll pull this up a little further. And I'll have to double check this one, but it probably needs to come up too. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out point, and it's going right over here too. Go to your object settings. I'll drop that down, not quite as high, maybe, or not quite as low. I'm just going to do a center run. Leave my stretchiness alone. And, there's my border. Okay, let's zoom out here. Okay, so there's my border. I could drop the density on it if I want a little bit more. I just don't want to make it, too wimpy, because then it just won't show up at all. So there you go, right? And that brings me right back up to here. So I'm going to take my running tool up to here. And I'm going to make that last section.
So you just moved your end point down to this end.
Yep.
All right, got you.
And then it's just another run stitch up to this line. And, I didn't, hold on, let me zoom in around. I'd make that point a little better. I'm just kind of rushing because we're running out of time. But, I'd make that point a little bit better. I just feel guilty not, making those correct, I guess. There you go. How's that? A little better anyway. So, and then, of course, you're going to drop your density. Same thing. You're going to do the same thing. You can do this all at one time. You don't have to do it each piece. Remember, if you hold the control key, you can select these pieces and do this, right? So now I'm down to really the last section. And it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to use my turning angle tool and, stitch these out and see if you want to drop the density a little bit more before you make that final decision, because that is going to look a little heavier maybe than what it actually stitches as. See? If I go out of 3D view. But you're going to do the same thing. You're taking your turning angle tool. We know that this is where our connector is. So I'm going to start a little bit over here. And, you're just going to make this Same thing, right clicks to get those curves, right? Back and forth. And you do want that little overlap on the end. And there you go. Now, you've got all of this done now, right? Except for a couple pieces I left out that you guys are going to make sure to include, right? So
Sure.
here is all of this. It's all in one color. It doesn't matter what color it is, but when you go up here, look, you can left click on the color chip. If you change from objects and click on colors, you can left click on that color chip and select everything, right? Edit, group it. Now you won't lose any pieces, right? And this is how, what we're going to look for is that our ends line up here, our ends line up here. Any place that's going to meet, we're going to see that they line up and make the adjustments. So now I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to move it. Oh, and I forgot to tell you to move your in and out points on that last piece.
You are so smart.
Well, there's something else we have to do too. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom in. And, see, I would need this part up here, I'm going to overlap, right? And I would need to make some adjustments to this down here because it's not quite matching up with this. And, this could use maybe a little adjustment too, right? But let's make sure they're both lined up. So I'm going to hold my shift key, make sure that I have both pieces selected. I'm going to align them by their bottoms and see that adjusted perfectly there. So we're not looking too bad right now. This is good up here. The only place I've got to adjust is right here, right? So I'm going to hit B and zoom in. Okay. And what I need to do is I'm going to select the second one. And I'm going to ungroup it now. Ungroup. Then I'm going to select this piece and go to reshape. And I'm just going to reshape this. I'm just going to move this and reshape it. And, there's my out point. I need to, that should be good. I just want to make sure that these are lining up right. And that's looking much better. Okay, so I've got that lined up on this second section. So I'm going to click on that first section. I'm going to delete it. Okay, on this piece right here, I'm going to check where my out point is. There's my in point, but I'm going to pull this out point down here. All right. And since I know that I need to start up here, I'm going to have one really big jump up here, right? So my last piece that I'm going to add to this is going to be a travel stitch all the way up to here. So I'm going to select this piece, and I'm just going to, or just your single running stitch, I'm going to very carefully run this up here. You're just going to try to follow that as close as you can, right? As a matter of fact, I can show you an even better way to do it. Let me get out of this. Okay, if I know that I have to have this run line, and I know it starts here, I'm going to pick like a different color thread. I'm going to pick blue because I can see it. I'm going to start my running stitch over here, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to click here and just follow everything that I've done already. And if you have to zoom in to make sure that you keep this dead center on this. And you know what? I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see. I always kind of forget sometimes to zoom because I'm just used to doing this.
Just rub it in.
I'm not rubbing it in.
Yes,
But
you are.
no, it is. It's just like bad habits, actually. Okay, so here we are. We're going to, just follow these lines you made dead center. Okay? Just dead center these. And remember to right click until you get to here. And then you are going to jump up here. And we know that we start over here. So we're going to travel all the way up to here. Okay, so does that make, let me put you into 3D view. See what I did? See my travel? From here where we end, all the way up to where we begin. Up here, right? Now
What
I'm
is
going
the
to,
purpose in
well watch,
doing that?
you'll see. I'm going to take this blue piece and I'm going to move it ahead of this. And I'm going to make sure that these are both the same color. And I'm going to pick something that's a little easier to see maybe on the screen. Okay, so there's peppermint. Ready? Let me get out a little bit further so you can see everything. Okay, so now I've got this, peppermint color all selected, right? I'm going to group it. I know that these ends are going to line up now, right? So I'll duplicate it, drag it over, make sure that I, start lining it up in there. Hold my control key, left click on the second one, make sure they're both selected, align to the bottoms, and you can see we're lining up really, really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I'm going to get rid of the image, and I'm going to show you why I did that line. And I did it here, as well. It doesn't matter. I don't care if I've got an extra line. I just want it to look consistent. And here's what we've got. There's my line. There's where we start. See? Let me kind of speed this up a little bit.
Oh,
Okay, so see, it's zooming through the design here, and everything's logical. There's no jumps right now, right? We did this last, here's that border, comes up, here's that last border. Now watch what's going to happen. I'm going to slow this down. Okay, there is no jump. I travel up to the next section, and we start all over.
so you travel all the way up to the top.
I did.
Gotcha.
And then, now it's basically going to do this repetitively, right? It's just going to keep going until, I run out of hoop space. So I'm going to turn on my hoop. I'm going to flip that hoop. And let me zoom out so we can kind of see what's going on. And, I can resize this if I need to. But, depending on what size hoop you have, you can get 2 or 3 repeats in here. And it's going to be very easy to line up, right? But, if you have a bigger hoop, you could, expand this out. And, it's really easy. Just left-click, drag around here, and use your align tools to align it on the bottom. And make sure that your pieces are aligned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. There's some density adjustments I'd make, but honestly, before you commit to all of, like, this big piece, right, stitch out that first piece and see where you want to adjust your stitch type or where you want to adjust the density. And, but, the logic to this, like, I kind of walked you through the logic, all right? But when you get an image like this, sometimes the best thing to do is to print it and draw on it. Like identify where the connectors are, identify where the repeat pattern is, right? And, like this one up here is a perfect example. It's really hard to tell, where do these really connect here, right? Oh, it's up here. The connection is one place, up here. See? Right there. Which means that if there's only one place for this to connect, how do you get this pattern done, all the little flowers done? That would be a little more logically challenging. It looks like it's easier, but you'd have to think, okay, I come down here, and I have to get back up there, so that flower is not where I'm starting. So I have to travel here, and, I can do this grid, how do you get those grids to work and add the flowers to it? It's a logical process, right? And then if you really look, okay, there's a connection there, but, oh, wait, there's a connection here, too. So as you're making, like, this flower right here, it's jumping down. So you're not going to make that flower. It's going to jump down. It's going to do the border. And then you're reconnecting either here or, reconnecting there and finishing the cycle, right? So you have to kind of think about this. Probably, you're going to come down here, come around, jump down, come back and jump up, finish these, figure out how to fit all that grid in there, do this last flower, jump back up and start the process over. But there's probably 2 or 3 different logical ways to do this. Okay? And to do it so that there are no jumps, you have to really kind of sit down and think about it, and think of it like a puzzle, right? You may not get it the first couple of times. You might have to watch it stitch out, and then you'll think, oh, gee, I could have done that. That's right, okay. And that's okay, because it is like a little puzzle that you have to think through. So I think in one of the webinars I referred to it as, you remember those, help Lucky get his Lucky Charms from the center of some maze on the back of the cereal boxes? It's like that. So if you loved those as a kid, then hey, you've got a more complex one. If you're one of the people that worked from the center out, hey, that's okay too. It's kind of the same logic, right? But so, you guys have any questions, or?
I don't know if I've got sense enough to do this.
I'm good.
I'm good.
You have sense enough to do this, Nancy. You certainly do.
I don't know. Go ahead, Barney. Keep going.
Well,
almost 10.
If you guys, you do, Nancy. You just have to take it in little snatches, right?
Yes.
And, even if you just get part of it done and then come back the next day and work on the rest of it, basically this piece is pretty easy, right? This is, this piece is a little more complicated. And then this piece down here is really making this, copy, pasting, and running some lines. Worst case, you forget to put a run line in there and you have a jump. It's not a big deal. You just flip it, right? So, no questions? You all good?
Sure.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to send you this image, which will, it'll be that double image for you guys to practice on. And if you guys want to work on the other flowers, go for it. We're not going to work on the flowers. The next thing we're going to kind of go on to is going to be lace, like standalone lace. We're going to start working on that logic, okay?
All right.
Okay.
So, we'll look at this. If you have any questions after you try this, we'll go through the questions at the beginning of the next webinar.
I'm gonna put it in my other computer, and I'm gonna do it while I'm watching you do it.
That's good. Yeah, because you can pause those too. You can pause the videos and then restart them. So,
Yes.
all right.
But
So
tomorrow night we have it.
Yep, tomorrow night we have Espresso. See, Nancy's getting like bombarded here. You guys get the, the EQ webinars, but Nancy's getting like double digitizing webinars and the expressive sessions ahead of you. So she's got it a little harder than you guys do.
Well, I wish almost that I had only done one of them, but you know, I'm all right. I didn't think when I did it because I didn't realize baseball was going to be all in here.
Well, Tuesday, what's tomorrow we're doing? We start the shading tomorrow for like florals and expressive.
Well, right. Well, they are playing tomorrow at 3, so hopefully they will be through.
That's all right. I've been watching the Miami, Miami Pacers.
Yes.
I gotta say, even though I don't wish LeBron any ill, I still can't root for him. I just can't do it yet. So I'm
I
hoping
love
the Pacers.
LeBron.
He's actually a nice kid. He really is. But I just can't bring myself to cheer Miami on. I don't know why. I should.
Well, you know who I got so angry today about E.T. got to always put something on there about the Kardashians. I wish they would take